Hi, Long Range Hunting. Today we're going to be talking about reloading and load development for long range precision hunting. All right, let's talk about this. This is something that I get a lot of questions on. It's kind of one of those things, it's a rabbit hole. You can go to extremes with reloading, with little things. You get the bench rest guys, they're kind of the reloading experts. I don't do everything they do just because, some guys will turn stuff and uniform stuff, and they'll do all these extra little things that are just microscopic stuff that, is it actually necessary? Not really. What they're chasing is, what they're chasing. But I see a lot of guys trying to do the same thing, and they're wasting a ton of components trying to tweak everything to get the just absolute best out of it when it's already within, completely acceptable levels. And the majority of the time, the shooter's not even capable of what they're trying to achieve. And so I see a lot of guys trying to chase it instead of learning to shoot better. They're just trying to chase their load development and trying to tweak everything they can to try to compensate for that. So it depends on what you're doing, on how deep you want to go or how you want to do it. I do things a little bit different depending on what I'm doing. This is my precision setup right here. I'll show you that method in a second. If I'm doing pistols, I'm not going to go with the same thing as my precision rifle. My pistols are nice and accurate, but I just use the Dillon for that, just because there's a little variance. It's not going to make a big deal, and it's such a short range that it doesn't matter. I'm not hunting with it. I'm not, those are just practice rounds, so it's not really a big deal. With precision reloading for hunting, you do want accuracy. You want to get as accurate as possible. What I say, though, is within reason. You don't have to go crazy and do all this little stuff or get a certain thing or this or that. It doesn't. Now, I've also modified how I reload. So a buddy of mine showed me a really good system. And it used to be that I did what most people do. I would get 500 to 1,000 pieces of rifle brass, and I would sit there and go through each step. I'd dedicate like a week into it. So first step would be tumbling. And then once everything was tumbled, then I would resize it. Resize the brass, knock out the primer, and then I would go back to tumble it to get, whatever lubrication I used for, the dye. Make sure that it's waxed or lubed. That way it's not sticking. And so I would put it back in there, tumble again. Then once everything was tumbled, then I would take it and start doing case prep, where you're trimming, deburring, etc. And I would do that for 500 to 1,000 cases. And then I would prime all of them. Then I would do powder in all of them. And then I would seat bullets. And so it would take a long period of time before I ever even had one single loaded round. And it was just very time consuming. Buddy of mine, Robert, showed me a method I'm going to show you guys in a second, and it works really, really well. To give you guys a breakdown of what I run 3 Chargemaster 1500s. The original reason I got 3 was so that I could do that old school method where I was just, pouring it in 500 to 1,000. And with 3 of them, I couldn't keep up. So every time I reached up, it was powder. It made it a lot faster. Now I use a single one, and you can see I have them labeled H1000 for my Magnum. I use Varget for a couple different guns, and then H4350. That's what I'm using right now for the 6 Creedmoor. And so I leave them tuned, and I'll tweak the settings and tune them specifically to that powder so it runs the most efficient. And with this new method, I can't keep up with one. It's a neat method. I just did load development, which is what we're going to be talking about for this gun. Now, I've had this gun, I've had other loads for it. The original powder I used was H1000. The reason I did is because I had plenty of that, and at the time I couldn't find the other powders I was looking for. And once I got the amount of powder I wanted in the H4350, then I could do load development. Well, I didn't have much time before hunting season, so I just did a quick load together, and it shot really well, and then I used that. Now hunting season's over, just like all the other stuff. It's our time to upgrade, do stuff, check equipment, whatever, you know, we need to fine tune that we saw as issues in the last season or whatever. And so I wanted to do a proper load development. So for the 6 Creedmoor, I mean, it was time anyways. Just I've got 2,500 rounds on the barrel. There's starting to be throat erosion, so tweaking that to make it to where it's the best, it's the right thing to do. Also did a deep clean on it. That's what I do about that time frame. You know, I'll do some cleaning in between. I always clean my rifles, but I'm talking about a tear everything apart, deep clean it, and put it back together. So we just got done with doing the load development for this. I did a few different loads, and I'm going to walk you through my reloading process and talk about load development and how that all goes about, and walk you through what I did. So to start off, for the 6 Creedmoor, I'm running this combination. I've got Lapua brass with a small rifle primer. I'm running 110 8-tips from Hornady. I use Federal Gold Medal Match 205M small rifle primers and H4350. It's a beautiful combination. I use pretty much Federal primers for all my stuff. I've used other ones, but the Federal Gold Medal Match are my favorite primers. Lapua has always been a favorite brass of mine. There are some other good ones out there, but I do recommend getting top tier brass. It makes a difference. Less work for you, especially. With these, I don't have to mess with them or do a bunch of stuff just to get them ready. They come ready to go, and they are very, very good brass. The H4350 has been amazing. I used Varget for a long time. I used Varget for a couple different guns. But for the 6th Creed, I want to do the H4350, and it's worked really well. So let's dive into how I do my reloading, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys. So I'm using an RCBS Chargemaster 1500. That's what I use for my powder dispense. I use a bench primer system. Really nice one. Really like the system. Makes it super easy. I use a Rebel RCBS press, Redding match competition dies. With micrometer adjustment, I really like micrometer adjustment. I either use Redding or RCBS for my match dies. For my brass, like I said, I'm using Lapua H4350 for this. I use a Frankford Arsenal Platinum case prep center. They're not that expensive, but they work really great. That's one thing I eventually will upgrade, but for now it works great. And it's a pretty simple system. Buddy of mine, Robert Brantley, taught me this, and it allows you to get everything done super fast. And every time you go through this step, not only are you not able to keep up with the Chargemaster running a single, but you, after a few seconds, have a loaded round every single time. It's very simple to do, very easy, and it's honestly pretty nice. So first things first, I'm going to take a case. I'm going to stick it in. I'm going to trim it. I'm going to dechafer, deburr, flip it around, clean out the primer pocket. I'm going to put a primer in, grab my powder, and then I'm going to set a bullet in, drop it in, and that's it. So show you what it looks like. You can see it's that simple. You know, I can knock out a couple. It takes just a few seconds, and I'm not able to keep up with this, so it works really, really well. Again, it's pretty simple. You go from your prep station to your primer to your powder to your bullet, and there you go. So you can see that's really simple and easy. It's really fast. I don't have a camera guy, so I just had to do my best with trying to show you guys that. But that's basically it. It's a very simple process. You don't need anything crazy. This shoots extremely well. This was from a number of times I did chronograph. I chronographed multiple times with the exact same result. This was on 3 shots, an SD of 1, an extreme spread of 2, and it did it consistently. So it was a great load. It shot really well. Here are, from my load development, the 3 groups with this. I did multiple groups with different loads, but this is the 3 with my choice load that I found. And it shot phenomenal. I mean, just right on top of each other, averaging around a quarter MOA. Now, when I first went out, I did a cold bore with the load I'd been using, which is a little bit more powder than this, a little bit more velocity at 3040. This new load actually brought it down, but it shoots way better, so I don't really care. But you can see that's a nice 3-shot group. It was prone, rear bag. That's how I do all my load development. I find that's the best way. So aiming right for there, you know, 3 shots, very good group. Not what I wanted, but it was still a good group. And then I went and shot other spots on there, little dots. And then these 3 are my groups with the final load. So did really well, shot really well. Even at distance it did. But, you know, it just shows the rifle shoots, because here's 5 groups. One's the ELD VT factory match ammo. One's the load I had before. And then these 3 are from the same load that I'm switching to, which is 38.9 grains of H4350. Now, how everybody tackles load development is a little bit different. What I do is I have a buddy with Quick Load, so I'll just contact him, and he's nice enough to help me out. Eventually I'll buy the program myself. But basically, you input all the data, and it's going to give you your possible nodes. So you want that accuracy node. So what I do is, then I can take it and I do it in 0.2 increments. That way I can just play around and see. And then once I see where it's tightening up, then I can go and mess with different stuff. You know, really, I'm going to set it at a certain seating depth just to start out with. I'm going to find what shoots best as far as the load. And then I start playing with those seating depths to tighten it up. Sometimes it's good enough that I don't even mess with it. This is one of those cases. I already knew what it was shooting off the lands with the other, and it shot really well. And when I'm shooting those types of groups with a 6mm, I'm not complaining. So I just leave it as is. Could I tweak it more? Yes. Could it just be a waste of ammunition and components? Yes. Could I get a little bit better out of it? Sure, but I'm not really that worried about it. There's what I consider acceptable accuracy, and it's well within that. So I'm just going to stick with that. But when I do load development, I'm going to start out at 100 yards. Every load does 100 yards. And then I'm also going to test them at distance. So I'm going to sit there and mess at 100 yards in group. And I always do more than one group. A lot of people like to load 3 or 5 up, and then that's all they do. They don't want to waste components. I load about 20 up or so, because I'm going to go and I want to shoot multiple groups to make sure that human error is not a factor. I want to see the consistency. Some guys will like to shoot 10, 20 shot groups. I find that a waste. What I'll do is I will shoot one group, get up, do something, get back on, shoot again. I want to see how consistent it is, even though I'm getting on and off the gun. When I do shoot, I am staying on the gun though until that string is done. But I personally don't really care to see, 5, 10, 20 round groups, because it really doesn't mean anything to me. I find I get more data from doing 3-shot groups and doing multiple groups, because, I can do 5 groups with 15 rounds, or if you're doing 5 rounds, that's only 3 groups. So I'm getting more data and seeing how they do. So I did the 3 groups. I chronograph, see what is going on there once I have the groups. I don't care about chronograph prior. I'm going to chronograph it, then put it in, and then I'm going to go to distance and I'm going to shoot to verify. Usually I'm going to go first out to a medium distance, and then I'll go out to a long distance. In this case, I had a very small Bobcat target at 414 yards that we played with, and it's a very small target. It's not a life size. It's a very small target. And I shot several different loads at that. Even my old load did really well. I'm sticking with this load and gonna go from there. One thing I do want to tell people, because this is a huge misconception, and unfortunately people believe it, that you can't do load development in the wind. And that is absolute nonsense. That's something that amateurs say. And I know I'm going to get people their butt hurt over that, but that's just the truth. That is amateur hour. If somebody will not go out in the wind and shoot, it's because they don't know how. Oh, I can't do load development. There's a breeze out there. So I do all mine. If I waited in Oklahoma for a no wind day, I might have 1-2 days in the entire year where I could actually do anything. It doesn't happen. You should know how to shoot in the wind. And that's something I see with guys that don't know how to call wind. They might be an experienced shooter, but they have no idea what they're doing. There was a guy not too long ago, he was trying to say, oh, well, you can't do load development in the wind at all. I haven't been able to do load development on this rifle I built for 3 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, you can. This was in wind. Actually, 2 different winds, because where I was shooting at 100, I had about a 16-mile-an-hour wind coming almost straight towards me from about the 10 o'clock position. Then my target is out this way. So I went from shooting at almost a no value wind to shooting a full value wind. So it really doesn't matter. You just have to be able to call your wind, know what you're doing with wind, and then shoot. These guys don't know how to call wind, and so they just miss a bunch. And so what's happening is they view it as a waste of ammunition time, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to call wind, so they shoot and it's off target, or they didn't see a wind change and so it's off target, or it's all over. And it's not that you can't do it in wind, it's they can't. And they think that they're a great shot and an experienced shooter. And so then they tell other people, oh, it's impossible, you can't do that. No. I don't know any credible shooter that won't go do load development in the wind. And most of us do. It's just, we don't have a choice. We know how to call wind. And here's the thing too. If you're really worried about wind, just focus on long range on the vertical spread. That's what most guys do. Because the wind can be side to side. You can have a little gust that brings it over here, but what's your vertical? And so if you just focus on your vertical groups, that's not going to be that affected by the wind. There you go. But any good shooter, anybody who's doing long range hunting, they should know how to shoot in the wind. And people who don't do long range hunting or don't have real training should not be giving advice to people on long range stuff. That's something that irritates me. A lot of these guys, the antis, and I hear this all the time from guys that are anti-long range, of talking about wind. Oh, well, you can't predict wind. You can't call wind. You can't adjust for it. You can't do load development in. And that's bull. It's absolute bull. They don't know how to do it. So don't be afraid to go out in the wind and do load development. I mean, you're going to be shooting in wind no matter what. So why not train in it? Why not do load development? Would it be perfect if we had an indoor, 1,000-yard range with no environmentals to affect it? Yes, but that's not realistic. So we do the best we can with what we have. So if you're struggling in wind, take a wind reading class. Practice, wind. Do stuff to compensate for that so you can learn how to do it. But don't be afraid to do load development in the wind. It's not going to hurt you. You can still do it. Obviously, you saw these groups. It's not hard. So don't let people tell you can't do that. But, when you go do load development, it's really up to you on what you're going to do. I have my own, ways of doing it, my own ways of reloading. This works very well. I get really low SDs. It shoots extremely well. Now, of course, that's a great rifle. I use good components. But again, what you want to do is up to you. This is just how I do it. With load development, I don't go as anal as some people do. I'm a pretty good shot, and I've got really good rifles. I'm using really good components. I have really good accuracy. So, do I feel the need to go crazy? When I'm averaging those 3 groups at 0.25, quartering away at 100 yards, am I going to sit there and cry about it and say, you know what, it's not tight enough? No. Because realistically, that's better than a lot of people can do. So, that's something with load development. There is a time for you to say, hey, you know what, this is good enough. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I've seen guys waste hundreds of rounds just chasing, the lands or chasing, the perfect powder charge and going back and forth. It doesn't need to be that complicated. Find something that shoots good. Not every gun is going to be the absolute one-hole tack driver. It's not. And then there's the shooter on top of it. So find a good load. You don't need to spend forever. I did this in a single range trip. Literally, I got the info from my buddy Aaron on his quick load. Then I loaded up those few ones, tested it, chronographed it, took it out to distance, and there we go. And now I'm just loading up ammo so I can go true my data and start practicing with it. It's that simple. So don't overcomplicate it. You don't need to go crazy with certain stuff. Obviously, the best equipment you can get is obviously ideal. These are great. I wouldn't really go anything underneath these. As far as a powder dispenser, if you can get an auto tricular, that's probably the best that you're going to get for, without paying some ridiculous price. But, get good components. Each one of these things has been proven to me. It works well. I'm a big RCBS guy. I like Redding for certain things. So I just kind of pick and choose what I'm going to use and gives me the best results. As long as it's consistent, works well. So that's just a little insight into what I do, a little, show and tell, let's say, and talk about load development, reloading. You guys can take from it what you want, if you want to do part of it, if you don't, it's really up to you. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'll try to help you guys out if I can. This system works really well. Robert Brantley's a buddy of mine. He's a pro shooter, and I completely changed how I'm reloading. It's so nice that every few seconds I've got a loaded precision round, and I'm not having to sit there and run all 3 at the same time. I can have them set up for different powders. It works super well, and I'll never go back. So if you guys want to try it, it's a great system. Hope this helped you guys. Everybody, be safe out there. Happy hunting.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video. And happy hunting!